Hi guys, welcome back to Learn with W3 Schools. My name is Dr. Zishan and today we're going to continue our Kotlin course and we're going to start with for loops. Now in previous sessions, if you have been following me, we have been talking about all these topics already, and today we're going to continue from our previous session. I think this is topic number 5. Using W3 Schools, we're going to continue and use Kotlin for loops and talk about ranges as well. Okay, so if you haven't subscribed here for the first time, please do subscribe. Please support our channel. Just gives us a little bit of encouragement. And if you want to learn programming and other things, well, you found the right channel. We are posting many tutorials using W3 Schools as a reference website, a wonderful website that allows us to have all the notes and materials, just explains the concept purely and very quickly. So we're using this website, so don't forget to subscribe and follow. Let's begin. Now, what do we mean by Kotlin for loops? Well, Kotlin for loops, just like in previous session we talked about while loops, for loops also does the same task. They loop through elements until a condition is satisfied. So often when you work with arrays specifically, you need to loop through all of these elements. To loop through elements, you use for loop together with the in operator. Now, in for loop, we always use in operator, indicating that we want to use this, especially with arrays. Now, for example, we have an array of values. We save them in a val cars. Now, what we want to do is we want to traverse all these elements. To do that, we use for in loop. Now, we've talked about in previous session as well. What in does is a very powerful keyword with the simple syntax of in. In automatically traverses all the elements inside an array one by one and then assigns each element in this x variable. Then we can use this x however we want inside the for body. Then it traverses the next element, assigns it back to the x, overriding the previous value, and then we can now use it again. Similarly, third value, fourth value. So automatically in keywords will go inside this array, read each single element, assign it to the x, then goes, checks if there is a next element. If it is, assigns it back to the x, and then so on and so forth. So it uses this for in syntax to loop through these elements. You can loop through all kinds of arrays. In this example, we use an array of strings, but you can also use arrays of integers as well. So for example, if you have an array of integer values, same syntax. You use for in x in nums. Okay. So now what's happening here is again the same thing. We use for loop x in nums. So it's going to read each element inside this array, takes the first element, assigns it to the variable x, and then we use it to print the output. Then it traverses the next element, assigns it to x, overriding the previous value, and then we can use this x now here. Similarly, it will go through all these elements. Once it reaches to the end of the loop or end of the array, it automatically returns false, that hey, there's no more element here, and the loop terminates. So using this simple syntax, we can traverse through array of like 100 or 2000 or million of data, but just simply use these two lines. That's what the for loop allows us to do. Okay, it allows us to traverse through. So using a simple syntax, we can loop through multiple elements. Traditional for loop. Unlike Java and other programming languages, there is no traditional for loop in Kotlin. Do keep this thing in mind. So if you're coming from C, C Sharp or Java, you will notice that the for loop syntax is quite different. In Java, we use variables to declare and initialize. We use a specific condition ourselves. Here we use for in loop syntax. So it's quite different from that. In Kotlin, for loop used to loop through arrays, ranges, and other things that contain countable numbers of values. So now it also uses something called ranges. Let's talk more about ranges now. Here we are. Now, what do we mean by range? Well, range is a specified range of characters. Okay, so you can specify a sequence of characters using a range parameter. So with for loop, you can also create ranges of values with these double dots. So double dots are key here. Using these two double dots, we can specify a range that I want to start from this value up till this point automatically, and you don't have to specify it manually. So for example, if you want to print the whole alphabet, you can do that by simply saying, hey, for characters, again, this becomes a variable. You can assign it any value. And then you can say in, start with the A character, double dot. Okay, so these double dot are Q, go up till X. So what this basically means that I want to start from A up till X, and this double dot will automatically ensure that you're using a range. So if you execute the code, you will find that it goes from A to X. Entire alphabet is printed without even specifying it here, because internally we have specified the range. Similarly, you can use number sequence as well that you can use to specify in terms of range. So for example, if you want a range between 5 and 15, you use 5, double dot 15. So double dot here specifies the range parameter that you can use. For programming like Python has the range function defined, where you can use the range function for the defining the whole range. And Kotlin just double dots does the trick. So even though if you use 5 double dot 15, it means you want to start with 5 and you want to go up till 15 or any other number for that matter. So this is 15. Now keep in mind 5 is also inclusive as well as 15. So if you specify 15, it means that I want to start from 5 up till 15. So this is also an inclusive number. Programming like Python has a range function, but the last number is usually exclusive. So it's always one number less than that. To keep this thing in mind, here when we specify 15, it means it's an inclusive number. I am going up till that 15 number. So whatever number you specify here, the range will automatically go up till that point. You can start from 0 to number 1 to 15 or whatever range you want from between these numbers. You have that using the double dots. So checking if the value exists within a range or not. So you can also use the in operator to check if the value exists in a range, meaning that you can use in function to find a particular number. Okay, do the searching within an array list. So to do that searching, we again use the same in loop, and then we specify the syntax in terms of that, hey, if to in nums. Now we have discussed this in if else already to a certain extent. You can use this in function. So we are specifying now is that, hey, listen, I have an array, but I want to find this number. So instead of using a variable name, we specified a value. So once you do a specify value, what it is going to do is just automatically in is going to take this value and search it inside this array. If the value exists, it's going to print, hey, the value exists. If it does not find this value, it's going to return that it does not exist. So in again is a quite powerful keyword. Similarly, you can find any string as well. So if you specify string value and then use in function inside the if, it's going to say, hey, I want to do search this array, find this value. If it exists, return that value for me. And then you can use whatever operations you want. That way you have a very nice sequence of characters and you can do very easily searching within the range. Similarly, we have break or continue a range as well. What break does is that you can also use these two keywords and it does the same task as we talked earlier with the loop. It breaks the function. So for example, I can use for nums in range 5 to 15. And if you find the value, so if you use the if condition, again, that's what recommended every time you need to use break. Make sure you reach a particular condition and then you specify, hey, nums is equals to 10, means that I want to start from the nums, check if the value is 10. If the value 10 reaches, break the loop. So the loop just breaks it out. Okay, so if I execute the code, you see that it starts from 5, goes up till 9, and then at the 10 point, it breaks the loop and there's no more output here, even though we have a range up till 15. So we can specify that. Again, just to for useless point, but it's there. So you can use break inside a for loop as well, just like we use break and continue inside the while loops as well. So the skipping a value also means that you use continue, same as we did in while loops. You can very easily say, hey, I want to skip a particular value. So if you reach 10, please skip it. So we use continue and the loop just skips a beat and then it just prints the next value instead of printing the first value. So here you can see that we have 9, but the 10 value is missing. The 10 is missing because we skipped the value 10 here. So we have specified, hey, start from nums, take a range 5 to 15. But if you find the value 10, I don't want to print this value. So for whatever reason that is. So we have skipped the beat using a continue statement. So continue and break also works with the for in loops as well. Make sense? Wonderful. Now the last topic in our basic Kotlin course is functions. Let's very quickly discuss what do we mean by that. Well, we have been using the main function for all our examples previously. We talked about the fun keyword that defines that we are using our own custom function and we have put everything inside the main function. But you can create your own functions as well. Function typically is considered as a block of code that performs a specific task. Okay, so function is a block of code which only runs when it is called. That's another second thing. Basic logic is that you declare your custom function that performs a specific task. So anything you want to do, you put it in functions. It makes the code reusable and repeatable. So you can call the function again and again as long as this wanted to perform the same task. Okay, so instead of writing the code multiple times, you just put the code inside a function and then you can call the function multiple times. That's what it does. It allows us code to become reusable and more professional looking and more customizable. So it is a block of code which runs only when it is called. So that's the key thing, that you need to call it, you need to declare it and then call it. You can pass data known as parameters into the functions as well. So you can give some data to it so that it can operate on it. Functions are also used to perform actions. They are also known as methods. Okay, what do we mean by that? We'll discuss that in a moment. So here's a predefined function. So it turns out you already know the what a function is. We have been using main function. Okay. So for example, println is also a function. It is used to output print text to the screen. So whenever we have used println, again, we are calling a predefined function that's already built, and we are calling this function with an argument that, hey, this is a string that I want to print on an output. So main is also a function as well as println. So how do we create our own functions? Well, to create your own functions, we use the fun keyword, just like we did with the main method, and write the name of the function followed by a round parenthesis. Okay. So what we do is we say fun, my function, this can be any name, making sure the name does not contain any spaces. You just follow the standard convention, does not begin with a number. It can have underscore, it can have number as a second character, but usually first character number are not recommended. And then again, no spaces as well. So as a single word, we use it. So if you're using two words, we use the camel case from my, and then the second word begins with an F capital. Just and the convention, not the rule as well. So you can just write in a simple word as well. But as a writing convention, we use a camel case code. Then these round brackets indicate that this is a function. So this is the key point here. Bracket start, bracket close, and then some actions that they need to perform. Now you notice we have called our own println function inside the main function as well. So this is also known as function declaration. Means that we have declared a function, that this is a function, it's going to do this task, but it's not going to execute by itself. To execute it, we need to call a function. We need to call this thing. So now that we have created a function, you need to execute it by calling it. So to call a function in Kotlin, they write the name of the function followed by the two parentheses. In the following example, the function, my function, will print some text and when it is called. So in this case, we are using function main, and inside this main function, we are doing function calling. So we are just calling our own function using the name function. Notice there's no fun word anymore needed, because the fun keyword is used to define a function, to declare a function. So once we have declared it, now to call it, we don't need to use this keyword. We just call our function name with the parenthesis. This is called function calling. So if you execute the code to see how it's working, here we go. So you notice two main things here again. First, the function is declared outside the main function. That's the key thing. Okay. So functions are usually declared outside the main function. Typically, we declare them before the main function is called. So that way the system already knows that this function is there. Then we say, hey, function main, and then we call our main function. So you can call this statement multiple times. The key thing is I've just got executed. You can also call it multiple times by meaning that you can execute this function multiple times. So if I rewrite the function, run the code again, as you would have already guessed, yes, it's going to print the same line twice. Okay, so this basically means that we have a declared function. Now I can call this function as many number of times as I want inside my main or in any other function as well. Every time I use this function, it's going to execute the statements here. That's what we mean by reusable code. Then now if it performs a specific task, you don't need to repeat this task code every single time. Just call the function name, it's going to execute and do the task for us. Okay, so function can be a multiple, you can call the function multiple times, exactly the same thing that we talked about already. So if you can call it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, it's just going to execute the same line as multiple times. The parameters. Now, this is again a key thing. An information can be passed to a function as a parameter. So parameters are specified after function name inside the parentheses. So you can add as many parentheses as you want, just separate them with the comma. Do note that you must specify the type of parameter in this case. So for example, when we declare our function, we have used function name string. Okay, so here we have explicitly told it that, hey, I want to declare a variable called fname, but colon string, meaning we are explicitly telling it that I want to declare this function of type having a parameter fname of type string. So the data type has to be specified. Then we can use the same variable inside our function body anywhere, anytime, multiple times, however we want. So I'm using fname because it's my variable name, fname here plus do. So whatever string I provide as an argument here will come back to this point here and will be printed. So now this is called function declaration. The key point again is the way you have declared a function, you must use the same signature. By signature, we means that since it has my small F capital, I use my small f capital. So the naming convention has to be followed. Second, because it uses this argument, it requires a parameter. So we need to provide it an argument. So in this case, we need to provide it as a string. So we need to follow the exact same signature. This is a function taking one argument. So we need to provide that argument here. If you don't provide an argument here, it's going to give us error that, hey, the declaration requires an argument and you have not provided an argument. You need to do that. And if you provide multiple arguments, again, it's going to complain that I only need one argument. Why you need to do more arguments? So in that case, this is an error. Now, the beauty here is that because we have my function, you can call this my function with a multiple different types of parameter, and it's going to print the whole code for us. So if I execute the code, notice that every single time it's just changing the name. However, the function is same. So that's where the reusable code comes into play. So you provide a different argument. Based on the argument, it's going to do its task. So whatever argument you provide, it's going to do the task. So for example, if you're creating addition, so every time you change the values, it's always going to do addition based on the arguments you provided to it. So now we have John. Again, if I don't provide an argument, this is going to complain that, hey, I need an argument. Please do provide that. So make sure we follow the signature by meaning naming convention and the parameters that are specified here. Okay. So when parameter is passed to a function, it is called an argument. Keep this thing in mind. Usually the words in a sense are used interchangeably like the synonyms, but basically we say, hey, this declaration here is parameter, and then when we provide the value here, this becomes an argument. So from the example above, f name was a parameter and the John, Jane and George are arguments. Multiple parameters. Now you can obviously provide multiple parameters, making sure they are comma separated. So comma separated means that I need two arguments in this case. First being f name, string, comma, second being age, colon, type integer. So the first argument has to be of type string, the second has to be of type integer. And then we can use this age variable as well as f name inside our function body. When we call this function, again we follow the same signature, making sure the function name is exactly the same, bracket start, bracket close, and then we provided now this time two arguments. First has to be of type string because we have specified a string here, and then second has to be of type integer because we have provided this to be of type integer. Kotlin will automatically assign the string to this f name. The second argument will go automatically and be assigned to this age. Okay, so that's why these arguments are also comma separated, indicating that this is the first argument, comma, second argument. First argument, comma, second argument. So the first argument is assigned to this f name. The second argument is assigned to the integer. Now notice again, we have called this function multiple times, just changing the values. Every single time you print it, it's going to print a different output for us. So for every function, we will have a unique output. That's what the power of function is. So when working with multiple parameters, the function call must have the same number of arguments as there are in the parameters. The argument must be passed also in the same order. Okay, so do keep this thing in mind. The order also matters. By order means that if you change the order, so let's try this example out. So for example, if I use 35 first, comma, and then I use the John here. So what's going to happen now? Error. Why error? Because the first argument has to be of type string and we provided an integer number. Whereas the second argument has to be of type integer and we provided a string. So this created a complications. So the type and the sequence also matters a lot. That's why we use the word signature. Follow this declaration signature. Name, argument, argument type, argument number, everything has to be same. So if you skip an argument, for example, I just provide 35. Again an error. Why? Because there is no value passed for the second argument. So the first value will always be assigned to the first parameter. The second argument has to be in the second argument. But if you don't provide it, it's going to complain. So that's what we need to be careful about, the signature of a method. So a function that we declared has to follow a specific signature. Okay. So when working with multiple parameters, the function call must have the same number of arguments. It's a key thing. So you need to follow the signature of the syntax very clearly. Now let's talk more about returning values. A function can return a value as well. By return value, we means that when we call a function, after executing, it's going to return a reply to us. Okay. So return value means that this function not only just prints the thing, but it actually gives an answer back to us. So by that we mean that, for example, if I ask somebody to bring me a glass of water, so that means that I have a function, that task is go bring the glass of water. So what the function is going to do is it's going to go get the water in the glass and then it brings back to me. So I have to be there to receive the answer as well. So the answer is, or the task is to bring the water back to me as well. Make sense, right? So when it brings it back, I also need to be there to receive the answer. So this is what happens when we do return type. First, I need an answer back. So I have to say, hey, bring the water back to me. And then second point is that I also have to be there to receive the water. So how do we do that in coding? Well, we use a word called return, which basically means that I want an answer. Just don't print the output on the console. We can do that. But after that, we say, hey, once you complete your execution, I want a type return. Okay, so this return basically means that I need an output. Now the syntax or the signature little bit changes. What's happening now is that we declare a function, we declare a type. I said, hey, x call an integer, so one parameter we have specified. So in order to create it requires one parameter. But now also notice that we have a colon and integer as well. What this specifies is that once this function executes, this will return a type integer value. So this colon after the parentheses indicate that this function will return a value. So when I use a return x plus 5, this return will actually go to this point, indicating that the answer has to be of type integer. So this is the declaration syntax. So in this syntax, we declared that, hey, I have a function, takes a single argument and returns an integer number. The function, and then because I've used this here, I must also use a return statement within my code, making sure that the value is actually returned as a part of declaration. Then when we call it, means that now with the function, we'll be asking it to go and fetch us the glass of water. So we call the function, we provided an argument, then we say, because we are expecting a reply, so now I'm expecting a reply here. Variable result. So whatever your function task is, perform that task, then it returns a value, and then I have to be here at the receiving end to receive the answer as well. So in a simple sense, we have asked the function, do this task, and then the return a reply to me. Because it is going to return the reply, so I have to be here to receive the reply as well. So variable result, this part is actually receiving the answer, and then we can use this reply to get the output on the console. So if you execute the code, you will notice that what's happening now again is that we get 8. How? Because we have said, hey, function 3. So we passed it one single argument, we added with 5, and then we are telling it we need an integer as a return type. That's why we have a return here and it performs. So for example, instead of my function, I can say, for example, my add. So we declare in my add function, I can say x, y, colon, another integer number. So now it takes two numbers, adds them together and returns it to me. So x plus y. So you can have your own function as well. And then we have specified colon integer after the brackets. So when I call this function, I'm going to say, hey, my add, and because I know in my signature it requires two parameters, so I'm going to give it two arguments. So 3 plus 5 here. So now it takes two values, sends it to the add function, it adds these two things together and returns an integer number to us. So this variable will now have an integer number. So if I execute the code, it prints the 8 here. Okay, so the same thing goes, but this time it takes two arguments, sends it to these parameters here, it adds them together, returns an integer number with this return keyword, and then that return answer is actually saved in a variable. You could also do this next thing is that, for example, you can write println statement, and then you can write this my add function directly inside the print statement as well. So you can specify values to this thing. Now if I execute the code, see what happens. We get 12. Why? Because obviously first one 5, 8 is from the previous answer. This time we have called the my add function directly inside another function, and this is perfectly legitimate value. Now you could say that, hey, it needs a result variable, right? But no, what's happening now is that we have called this my add function. So it's going to call this, it needs two arguments, so the syntax is fine. It takes two arguments, adds them together, returns a value in form of integer, and that integer is actually directly passed to the println. So the answer is still being received by println. So you can use my add function directly inside println, and because println also needs some form of data to get printed, that data is actually being handed over by my add function. My add function will directly send the data to println as a receiver, and then println actually prints the output here. So in this case, we have received in a variable. So result behaves as a variable and receives the answer. Here, println behaves as a receiver directly and prints the value. So you can embed this my add function directly in a println as well. Similarly, you can add it inside another function as well. So you can create a nested layout as well. So for example, I can say, hey, let's go for println bracket start bracket close. I do my add. I call this function, and I can have, for example, 2 comma 2. But this time, instead of using the 2 value, I can use my add and then another value, for example, 34 comma 7. Okay, so now what we have done is we have used the nested calling function. This is again a perfectly legitimate thing. What's happening now is that I have a print method. Inside the print method, I have a my add method. Okay, so inside my add method, it takes 2 arguments. It needs 2 arguments. So the first argument is there 2, but the second argument itself becomes another function call. So first of all, it's going to execute this innermost function, does the addition, returns the answer, and will be assigned to this my add. So then the second my add will execute, and this the second argument will actually be the reply from this argument. And then we will have my add perform its calculation. Whatever is the answer will be returned to the println. So if you execute the code, you see we have a 43. Perfect answer. Why? Because again, so 37 plus 4, whatever is the answer of this will be returned to and added by 2. Whatever is the answer for that will be returned to println, which ended up as being 43. So you can use nested functions as well to do more complex form of calculations or more recursive calls to functions to do more advanced level of tasks. Make sense? So that's why, again, see, this function reusability comes into play. Okay, so now using 2 parameters, we again does the same thing. My function returns x plus y results, whatever the answer is saves in here, same things. So a shorter syntax for return as well. So you can simplify this code if it is with this shorthand operation as well. So there is also shorter syntax for returning values. You can use the equal operator instead of return keyword. How does this work is, so instead of using the return keyword, you can directly specify in your function syntax within a single line using the equal operator. And notice there is no block statements now. So I have a function, my function takes an argument 1, takes a second argument integer. So 2 arguments are there. So instead of specifying the data type and the block, if this is the only thing that is doing, if there are multiple lines of code, then this won't work. Okay, so for example, it takes arguments, does some calculations or analysis or validation, then you need the block of code. The first syntax has to be there, then it may return the value. But in this case, if the only purpose is to do the addition, you can directly write it as a shorthand by using this. So is equals to x plus y. That's it. So no return type is specified here. So this return type is also not specified here. The block is not specified here. The return statements, this is nothing is specified here. Directly equal to x plus y. So in other words, if it only does a single operation as a return type, single statement is there, then you can use equal to operator x plus y, and then it will automatically know that it's staff type integer. We don't even need to specify the return type. So when you use my function 3 plus 5 does the same task. Make sense? A little bit, right? Perfect. Okay, so I hope you understood this. Now, if you have been following me, please leave a comment. Let me know what more you want to know about Kotlin, how you're using Kotlin. Hopefully in future, we will be using Kotlin inside Android Studio to create more apps using Kotlin within Android Studio as well. So let me know if you're interested in that course as well, so we can start Android app development as well. So up till now, thank you for watching. I will be again posting the next sessions soon, but I want to know if you guys are interested or not. If nobody's watching again up till this point, not many views, so it just makes a little bit disheartened. So you don't want to make more videos on this topic. But yes, if you are interested in learning Kotlin classes and other examples and Android with Kotlin, do leave me a comment and let me know if you are interested or not. Okay, and then I will be hopefully trying to make the videos based on your interest. This is Dr. Zishan Bhatti from W3 Schools, Learn with W3 Schools website. Thank you very much for watching. See you in next class.